Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. James Whitaker was a man of discipline, devotion, and quiet resolve. At 34, he had crafted his life with care, every choice a brick in the foundation of a future he believed in. His heart belonged to Clara Monroe, a woman whose charm and sharp wit had captivated him for 5 years. She was the one his father called a rare find, the one who laughed hardest at his dry humor, her eyes sparkling in a way that made the world feel brighter. Their engagement party was set for the following Friday, the wedding 8 months out, and James had poured his soul into a $14,000 ring, a delicate band with an emerald center stone, chosen because Clara said it reminded her of her grandmother's heirloom. He never questioned her loyalty, not until the text. It arrived on a quiet Wednesday evening, slicing through the calm like a blade. James was scrolling through emails, winding down from a grueling day of contract negotiations, while Clara was out for what she called her last girls' night before the big commitment. The message came from an unknown number on an old messaging app he rarely checked. No name, no photo, just a few lines that hit like a punch. Ask Clara what she was doing with Derek at the Silver Oak Bar last Saturday. You know, the ex she called a mistake? It wasn't just drinks. Ask her what one last fling meant. Good luck. James's pulse thundered. The Silver Oak wasn't some corner pub. It was a sleek, upscale spot downtown, near Clara's old apartment. Derek, her ex from college, was someone she dismissed as a reckless chapter she'd closed long ago. James hadn't heard his name in years. The message was too specific, too deliberate to be a prank. Doubt crept in, cold and sharp, rooting itself in his chest. He sat frozen, staring at the screen, as Clara's laughter from countless nights echoed in his mind. Was it possible? He wanted to believe it was a lie, but the seed was planted, and it grew fast. Sleep evaded him that night. He lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, while Clara came home late, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood. She leaned down, kissed his cheek, and murmured about her night. How Lily spilled her martini, how they reminisced about college days. Her voice was warm, her touch familiar, but every word felt like a splinter. James nodded, smiled, kept his voice steady, but inside his heart was a storm. By Thursday morning, he'd called in sick to his law firm. He needed answers, not guesses. He needed proof. He reached out to an old friend, Marcus, who ran a small cybersecurity firm and had contacts in places most people didn't. Marcus, James said, his voice low, hypothetically, if I needed security footage from the Silver Oak Bar for a specific night, could you get it? Marcus didn't pry, just asked for details, date, time, people. James provided everything. By late afternoon, Marcus sent a folder with grainy stills. There was Clara, her hand resting on Derek's arm, her smile too intimate for casual friends. Another image showed them leaving together, Derek's hand low on her back, her head tilted toward him in a way that screamed familiarity. James stared until the images seared into his mind. This wasn't a friendly catch-up. This was betrayal, deliberate, brazen, cruel. When Clara walked in that evening, humming as she carried a garment bag for her engagement party dress, James was waiting on the couch, his face unreadable. "We need to talk," he said, his voice flat as stone. Clara's smile faltered. "Okay, you've been off all day. What's wrong? Who's Derek?" James asked, his eyes boring into hers. Her face froze. "Derek? My ex from college? Why are you even? Why were you with him at the Silver Oak last Saturday?" Her skin paled, her voice catching. "What? Who's feeding you this nonsense?" James didn't blink. He slid his phone across the table, the damning stills glowing on the screen. Clara stared, her breath hitching. "Okay, fine," she snapped, her composure cracking. "I saw him. He was going through a rough patch. We had a drink, that's all." "Then why did someone overhear you say one last fling?" James's voice was steady, but his words cut deep. Clara's eyes widened, not with guilt, but with panic. "You're spying on me? This is crazy. You're blowing this out of proportion." James stood, his presence cold and unyielding. "The engagement party's canceled. The wedding's off. We're done." Clara's voice rose to a shriek. "Over a drink? You're throwing everything away? My family's coming. My dress is ready. You can't do this." "You lied to me," James said, his gaze unwavering. You slept with your ex days before we were supposed to pledge our lives together. You betrayed me. She crumbled, tears streaming, but they felt performative, desperate. You're heartless, she sobbed, then stormed to the bedroom, slamming the door. Her cries echoed through the apartment, loud enough to stir the neighbors, but James didn't move. His heart was fractured, but his resolve was iron. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was a declaration of war. The next morning, the storm broke wide open. James's phone buzzed relentlessly, a barrage of texts and calls lighting up the screen like a battlefield. Clara was first, her messages swinging wildly between tearful pleas and sharp accusations. I'm sorry, James. I messed up, but you're throwing away 5 years, followed by you're so cold, you're humiliating me. When he didn't respond, her tone shifted to victimhood. How could you do this to me? It was one mistake. James read each message, his jaw tight, but didn't reply. He wasn't playing her game. By 9 a.m., Clara's mother, Evelyn Monroe, called, her voice dripping with condescension. James, darling, Clara told me there's been a misunderstanding. She began, her tone a mix of pity and manipulation. She's devastated. Surely you don't want to ruin everything over a little lapse in judgment. James's voice was like steel. Evelyn, your daughter cheated on me days before our engagement party. That's not a lapse. It's a betrayal. Evelyn huffed, undeterred. You're overreacting. Women get nervous before big commitments. It was just Derek, for heaven's sake. You'll regret this. I'd regret marrying someone who lies to my face, James said, and hung up before she could respond. By noon, Clara's father, Gerald, was on the line, his voice gruff and accusing. You're making a fool of our family, he barked. Clara made one stupid choice, and you're dragging her name through the mud. Be a man and fix this. I'm not responsible for her choices, James replied coolly. She made her bed. Now she lies in it. Gerald sputtered, called him spineless, and hung up. James didn't flinch. He was done absorbing their venom. Then came the vendors. James spent the afternoon canceling bookings, caterer, florist, venue photographer. Most were sympathetic, some offered partial refunds, but others, like the venue, were firm. Non-refundable deposits were gone, thousands down the drain. Clara had the gall to text him. You canceled everything? You're paying for it all, James. He nearly laughed at her audacity. You cheated, Clara. We split joint costs. Your personal bookings, like that custom dress, are on you. It's one of a kind. I can't return it, she fired back. Then sell it, James replied. Or wear it to cry in. I'm not funding your betrayal. She hung up, her screams echoing through the call before it cut off. But Clara wasn't just fighting him. She was rewriting the narrative. Mutual friends started calling, their voices hesitant. Clara said you flipped out because she had coffee with an old friend, one said. James didn't rage. He stated the truth with surgical precision. She slept with her ex days before our engagement party. I have proof. We're done. The photos, the timeline, the message. He shared only what was necessary. Some friends apologized, others backed off, but the cracks in Clara's story began to show. Her lies were crumbling under the weight of facts. Then came the apartment standoff. Clara refused to leave. I'm not going anywhere, she declared, arms crossed in the kitchen like she was staking a claim. This is my home, too. James's voice was calm but unyielding. The lease is in my name. You have 10 days to move out, or I change the locks. You're throwing me out? I have nowhere to go, she shouted, her eyes flashing with desperation. You have family, friends, Derek, James said evenly. You're not my responsibility anymore. She stormed off, slamming doors, her sobs a performance for sympathy. James didn't budge. He wasn't cruel. He was resolute. That evening, Clara's sister, Lila, called, her voice softer, more reasonable. She's a mess, James. Can't you give her a little more time? Would you live with someone who cheated on you? James asked. Lila paused, then sighed. No, I get it. Even she couldn't argue. Then there was the ring, $14,000, emerald and white gold, a symbol of a promise now shattered. Clara refused to return it. You gave it to me, she said, her tone defiant. It's mine. It's an engagement ring, James replied. Conditional on a commitment you broke by sleeping with your ex. Return it, or I'll see you in court. She laughed, bitter and smug. You gonna sue me over a ring? Pathetic. 2 days, James said. Then I file. Her smirk faltered, but she didn't budge. James wasn't bluffing. He'd already contacted a lawyer, gathered receipts, and prepared for small claims court. Clara had no idea what was coming. The whispers were spreading. Clara's version of events, poor, heartbroken girl, victim of an overzealous fiancé, was unraveling as James quietly shared the truth. He didn't need to shout or smear her. The facts were enough. A close friend, Sarah, texted him, I heard what really happened. I'm so sorry, James. You don't deserve this. Another friend, Tom, called to say he'd cut contact with Clara after seeing the photos. The tide was turning, but Clara wasn't done fighting. She had one more move, and it was bold enough to make James question how far she'd go to save her image. Clara's final gambit came on Monday evening, a move so brazen it caught even James off guard. He returned to the apartment after a long day at the law firm, his mind heavy with vendor disputes and court preparations, to find Clara and Derek sitting on his couch. Clara was dressed impeccably, her makeup flawless, her expression a practiced blend of remorse and defiance. Derek lounged beside her, one arm draped over the cushion, a faint smirk playing on his lips. The scene was staged, a calculated ambush. James, Clara said, her voice soft but deliberate, we need to talk. Derek wanted to come and clear the air. James stood in the doorway, his briefcase still in hand, his eyes narrowing. Clear the air? You're in my apartment with the man you cheated with. Get out. Both of you. Derek raised a hand, as if to calm the tension. Look, man, it wasn't planned. Things got out of hand. Old feelings came up. I'm sorry, okay? James's laugh was sharp, cutting through the room. Sorry? You slept with my fiancé days before our engagement party. Don't insult me with fake apologies. Clara stood, her voice trembling for effect. James, please. We made a mistake, but we're hurting too. Can we just talk this out? You're throwing everything away. James's gaze locked on hers, unflinching. You didn't make a mistake, Clara. You made a choice. And now you're trespassing. Derek, you're leaving now. Clara, you're out tomorrow. Derek's smirk vanished, his posture stiffening. You don't get to talk to her like that. James pulled out his phone, his voice icy. You've got 30 seconds before I call the police for trespassing. Test me. Clara's face crumpled, but it was anger, not sorrow. You're so cruel, she hissed, grabbing her purse. Derek stood, muttering under his breath, and they left, Clara shooting a venomous look over her shoulder. You'll regret this, James. You're destroying something you'll never get back. No, James said, his voice steady. I'm getting rid of a lie. The door slammed, but Clara's parting shot wasn't the end. It was the prelude to her next attack. By Tuesday morning, James noticed discrepancies in his email. Vendors he'd already settled with were sending invoices, demanding full payment. One, the florist, claimed Clara had told them James was covering all costs due to personal liability. Another, the dressmaker, emailed about Clara's custom gown, saying she'd informed them James would pay to make amends for emotional distress. The audacity was staggering. James called the dressmaker directly. Clara and I are no longer engaged due to her infidelity, he explained, forwarding the email chain where they'd agreed to split costs. She has no authority to charge me for her dress. The dressmaker, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, was livid. That girl told me you were footing the bill to make things right. I'm sending her the invoice, and she's banned from my shop. One by one, James untangled Clara's financial sabotage, but the damage wasn't just monetary. She'd escalated her smear campaign, spinning tales to their social circle that painted James as a controlling paranoiac who ended their engagement over a harmless coffee with an old friend. A mutual acquaintance, Greg, texted, Clara's saying you overreacted to a platonic meetup. What's the real story? James didn't hesitate. She slept with her ex a week before our engagement party. I have photos and messages. She lied to my face. He sent Greg the stills from the Silver Oak bar. Greg replied, damn, man. I'm sorry. She's telling everyone a totally different story. The lies were spreading, but so was the truth. James didn't need to shout or slander. He shared the facts with those who asked, letting the evidence speak for itself. Clara's facade was cracking. Her role as co-chair of a local arts council began to wobble when a board member, Rachel, called James to confirm the rumors. "Clara is saying you're spreading lies about her," Rachel said cautiously. "I'm not spreading anything," James replied. "She cheated with her ex, lied about it, and is now trying to rewrite history. I have proof if you need it." He sent Rachel the timeline and photos. 2 days later, Clara stepped down from the council, citing personal commitments. The truth was catching up. Even Derek faced consequences. Word reached James that Derek's on-again, off-again girlfriend, Mia, had dumped him after learning about the affair, likely tipped off by the same anonymous source who texted James. Mia confronted Derek at a crowded bar, calling him a pathetic cheater in front of their friends. Derek's charm couldn't save him this time. James didn't gloat. He focused on the next battle, the ring. Clara still hadn't returned it, and the small claims court date was looming. He'd prepared meticulously, receipts, appraisals, texts where Clara admitted the ring was an engagement gift. She thought he was bluffing, but James was ready to prove her wrong. As Clara's lies unraveled and her allies dwindled, she was about to learn just how far James would go to reclaim what was his. The small claims court hearing arrived on a gray, rain-soaked Wednesday, and James was ready. He walked into the courthouse early, his folder of evidence organized with lawyer-like precision. Receipts for the $14,000 emerald ring, the anonymous text, the silver oak bar photos, and Clara's own messages admitting the ring was an engagement gift. Clara arrived late, her mother Evelyn at her side, both dressed in somber dark tones, as if mourning a tragedy of their own making. Clara clutched her purse tightly, her face a mask of calculated sorrow, her lips trembling just enough to play the victim. When the judge called them forward, Clara spoke first, her voice quivering. "The ring was a gift," she told the court, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "James broke off our engagement over a misunderstanding. I was heartbroken, and now he's trying to take everything from me. I deserve to keep it after all I've been through." James didn't react. He handed the judge his packet, his voice calm and measured. The engagement ended because Clara was unfaithful with her ex-partner days before our engagement party. The ring was a conditional gift, given with the promise of marriage, a promise she broke. Under law, it must be returned or its value repaid. Here's the evidence: photos, messages, and the ring's appraisal. The judge reviewed the documents, her eyes scanning the stills of Clara and Derek at the Silver Oak Bar, the texts where Clara dodged questions about her drink with her ex. She flipped through James's timeline, noting the dates and details. Clara fidgeted, her mother whispering urgently in her ear, but the judge's expression remained impassive. "Miss Monroe," the judge said, her tone firm, "this court deals in facts, not emotions. The evidence shows a breach of trust that led to the engagement's end. The ring was conditional, and that condition was not met. You will return the ring or its appraised value of $14,000 within 30 days. Clara's mouth fell open, her carefully crafted facade crumbling. Evelyn gasped, muttering, "This is outrageous. You're ruining her." James met their glares with a steady gaze. "No," he said quietly, almost to himself. "She did that herself." The ruling was a turning point, but it wasn't just about the ring. The courtroom loss sent shockwaves through Clara's carefully curated world. Vendors, now aware of her attempts to pin costs on James, turned on her. The caterer, who'd received one of Clara's fraudulent emails claiming James would cover unpaid balances, forwarded the correspondence to a local business ethics board, branding Clara's actions as deceptive. The dressmaker, still furious over Clara's attempt to dodge her gown's $3,000 bill, threatened legal action of her own. Clara's financial schemes were collapsing, and her reputation was taking a bigger hit. Word spread fast. Friends who'd initially bought Clara's story began to pull away. A group chat with mutual acquaintances went quiet after James shared the court ruling and the photos with a trusted few. "I can't believe she lied like that." One friend, Emma, texted James privately. "She told us you were controlling. I'm so sorry." Another, Mark, called to say he'd cut contact with Clara after hearing the truth. "She played us all," he said. "You're better off, man." Clara's social standing eroded further when the Arts Council, already shaken by her resignation, formally distanced itself from her. The chairwoman, Rachel, emailed James, "Thank you for the clarity. We've removed Clara from our donor list. Her behavior doesn't align with our values." It wasn't exile, but it was close. Clara's name no longer carried the weight it once did. Invitations to brunches and galas stopped coming. Her social media following dwindled as people unfollowed or muted her posts. Even Derek wasn't spared. Rumors swirled that he'd lost his job at a local marketing firm after his public breakup with Mia went viral in their circle. A friend of a friend sent James a screenshot of a heated post where Mia called Derek a serial liar who cheated on her multiple times. The anonymous tipster who'd alerted James about the Silver Oak Bar seemed to have struck again, ensuring Derek's actions followed him like a shadow. James didn't revel in their downfall. He wasn't driven by spite. He was driven by principle. Every lie Clara told, he countered with truth. Every debt she tried to push onto him, he redirected back to her. Every friend she manipulated, he enlightened with facts, never venom. The ring was still out there, but the court order was clear, and Clara's time to comply was ticking down. She'd underestimated James, thinking he'd crumble under her tears or her family's pressure. Instead, he'd turned her betrayal into a lesson she'd never forget. But Clara wasn't done. Late one night, James received an email from her, a long, rambling mix of apology and blame. "I messed up, James, but you're making me out to be a monster. Tell people it was a misunderstanding. Please, I'm losing everything." He read it, his face expressionless, then archived it without replying. Clara's world was unraveling, and she was looking for a lifeline. James wasn't offering one. The next move was his, and he was already planning it. 3 months after the courtroom victory, James stood by the window of his apartment, a mug of black coffee warming his hands. The chaos had faded, replaced by a quiet that felt like freedom. The apartment, once heavy with Clara's presence, was his again, lighter, simpler, cleansed of her lies. The ring had been returned, not by Clara's choice, but by court order. She dragged her feet until the last possible day, finally surrendering the emerald band to avoid a lien on her assets. The $14,000 piece now sat in a safe deposit box, a relic of a life James no longer wanted. Clara's world had imploded under the weight of her own actions. The vendor disputes she'd tried to pin on James backfired spectacularly. The dressmaker, Carla, had filed a formal complaint with the Business Ethics Board, and Clara's unpaid gown bill was now in collections. The caterer, fed up with her lies, shared her fraudulent emails with other local vendors, ensuring Clara's name was mud in their tight-knit industry. Her social circle had all but evaporated. The Arts Council had erased her from its history, and the brunch invites and charity events she once thrived on were gone. She wasn't ostracized outright, but her influence was shattered, her image cracked beyond repair. Derek, too, had faded into obscurity. His public humiliation at Mia's hands had cost him more than his relationship. Jobless and persona non grata in their social scene, he moved out of town, rumors trailing him like smoke. The anonymous tipster who'd exposed their affair remained a mystery, but their work was done. Clara and Derek's choices had burned their bridges for them. James didn't keep tabs or gloat. Revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about detachment. He let Clara and Derek choke on the consequences of their betrayal, while he rebuilt brick by honest brick. The sting of 5 years lost still lingered, a quiet ache in moments of solitude, but he faced it head-on. He started seeing a therapist, not to dwell on the past, but to understand himself better. He reconnected with old friends, like Marcus and Sarah, who'd stood by him through the storm. He picked up his camera again, capturing early morning cityscapes, finding solace in the lens. One evening, as he edited photos at his desk, a text came from an unknown number, "I still love you." James stared at the screen, knowing it was Clara. He felt no anger, no temptation, just clarity. He deleted the message without responding. Some bridges don't get rebuilt. Trust, once shattered, stays broken, and Clara had no place in the life he was crafting. He wasn't ready to date, and he wasn't rushing. Love, he'd learned, wasn't enough on its own. He wanted more: character, integrity, honesty that didn't waver under pressure. For now, he was enough for himself. Mornings began with runs along the river, evenings with books or quiet dinners with friends. His work at the law firm steadied him, his focus sharper than ever. Colleagues noticed the change, a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. The fallout had taught him something else. Truth is a weapon, wielded best with precision, not fury. He hadn't needed to scream or smear Clara. He'd simply let her lies collapse under their own weight. Friends who doubted him now sought him out, their apologies sincere. "You handled it with class," Mark told him over beers one night. "She tried to bury you, and you just walked away stronger." Late one night, as James stood by his window watching the city lights, he felt a peace he hadn't known in years. The scars were there, but they were proof of survival, not defeat. Clara's betrayal had been a fire, but it hadn't consumed him. It had forged him. He was free, not just from her, but from the version of himself that had trusted too blindly. Whatever came next, he'd face it with eyes wide open, ready for a life built on something real.